I am back because I got some good feedback from the last video where I talked about how I got accepted into the Oxford MBA and what that application process was like for me. Then I realized it is application season for all of you, so I thought it would be a good idea to do a focus video describing the interview process. I think this can be applied to any general future interviews you have for jobs and internships, so this should all be helpful. Let's get started. There are 4 or 5 categories I think you should prepare questions for. Starting from the first one would be values. How do you fit with the company or the company culture? The second topic is collaboration. Tell me a time when you worked with a team. Number 3, conflict, the typical how do you deal with conflict. And the last one is change. How do you deal with change in your life or your work life? Those are all of the categories that you need to focus on developing stories and scenarios for. And I think that's a lot easier to think about than looking at a list of 30 or 40 questions. You will not even have that much time to go through that many questions. You'll likely have a 30 or 45-minute interview of behavioral or competency questions that these topics cover. So hopefully that helps you get over the hump of even getting started. Now I will talk to you about my answers I've given in the past and even recently, as I have also gotten through some job interviews. So here we go. Oh, I feel like I'm interviewing myself all over again, so I'm even nervous now. These are answers that are very similar to the ones I gave when I did my Oxford interview. The first one will be tell me about yourself. For this one, it's always a professional leaning. You can loop in some bits about yourself that's outside of work if it's relevant to your career, but focus more so on your professional career because that is what you're going to do the MBA for anyway. I will say something like, I left undergrad with a degree in environmental science. Then I worked in an environmental consulting firm for a short period of time, which is just a glorified way of saying I did a lot of air quality reporting. So I got a little bored and wanted to develop a new skill set. And at that time, data analytics was a growing field. Companies were gathering so much data, they didn't have enough analytics or analysts to support the analysis. And I was pretty science and data leaning coming from a BS, so that was an interesting field for me. My first role in data analytics was in a nonprofit medical group where I was the only analyst supporting the finance team. It gave me a lot of freedom to learn a lot and self-teach myself, so most of everything I know about data now is self-taught. But I felt like I soon grew out of that role after being there for a year and a half. So I looked for an opportunity and found one at a much bigger company, but it gave me all the resources to learn more from and a lot of people who became my mentors, and I was able to grow a lot more professionally there, doing more advanced analytics, even teaching myself Python, even eventually doing some project management. So I felt that I was growing into a managerial type of role, but I also, outside of work, was volunteering for a low-income school in San Francisco. I loved doing that on the side because growing up I struggled in education. I was never the smartest person in the class, but I was the hardest working. So I saw a lot of myself in these kids. So all along in the past few years, I was looking for a way back to a social impact career combined with the professional and technical skills that I've learned in the past few years. And that's why I feel the MBA is the best next step for me. There's so many opportunities and so much diversity in careers that I think I can make a good step into a social impact focused career there. So that is a tell me about yourself. You don't need to go all the way back to talk about your undergrad, but for me it felt like it was part of the story that brings me to this point of wanting to do an MBA. The way you want to structure your story is to frame it as all of these experiences that you had in the past that lead up to why you want to do the MBA. For me, it was the technical skills that leads me to be a good fit for the MBA. So I understand some business talk, I've got some foundation, but I've also got some interest in learning business skills that I haven't because I don't come from a business background. And that fits with also a non-traditional type of candidate, which the Oxford MBA does look for a lot, I think. So that was the tell me about yourself and also a bit of why you want to do the MBA now. The MBA is very common for people to do some kind of career pivot, no matter how big or small it is. Could be small, it could be big. We can move into the values topic now. This question is trying to get a sense of how well you fit their culture or values. The Oxford MBA really prides itself on 3 values. The first is the international renown, of course, and you can guess what that is. Oxford is one of the oldest universities in the world, which means that there is so much historical intellect and people who are drawn to speak at Oxford and who come from Oxford, which creates a very rich environment. So they do want you to recognize that. So make sure that your answer does have aspects of wanting to be in an environment like that. The second important value of the Oxford MBA is the social impact or responsible business. They really pride themselves on delivering a program that focuses or touches upon responsible business or social impact and some non-traditional careers. So there, of course, are still consulting and finance career paths in the Oxford MBA, but they also value careers that focus on development or social enterprises or philanthropy. So that's not to say that you need to go into those careers, but at least expressing that you have an interest to learn about that non-traditional aspect of doing good in business, that is also what they're looking for. Finally, the third thing the Oxford MBA really values is diversity. I would say that Oxford does try to create a very international and diverse cohort. There were people from, I think it was 60-something different countries in my class. 92% were international, so people were from all over the world. I do think Oxford has the most diverse class of other MBAs, even in SIAD and LBS included. Those were the 3 values that the Oxford MBA really prides itself in. So make sure you make them feel that and that you also value those 3 things. And that will be the key of differentiating their MBA from another generic MBA. For the remaining 3 categories, collaboration, conflict, and change, I'm not going to give my exact responses for the sake of the length of this video, but I will give you a way to structure your response in order to make it the most punchy and impressive. And you may have heard of this structure, and you're going to do the same in your MBA interview. It's called STAR. S for situation, T for task, A for action, and R for result. For situation, you're going to set the scene of your story, and you really want to make the interviewer feel like she or he is in your shoes. Really paint the picture so they can understand how difficult and impressive your task was. So you could say something like, I was in a startup that was very fast-paced, had not very much direction or resources, but I was given this task. Now moving into task, this is where you're going to very briefly explain the task at hand. Be careful not to go too wordy or else you may lose the interviewer. You just want to give just enough information so that they understand. So for example, I was given a project to lead, a 2 million budget project to lead across a global team, which was something I had not undertaken before, so I was quite nervous. Action, now you're going to explain how you went about accomplishing this task. You can say, because I was very detail oriented and I emphasized strong communication with my teammates and had regular stand-up calls and kept meetings on time, I was able to earn the trust of my test users, and we delivered the project on time without any impact to the budget. So that was the action of that whole task you did. Finally, in the result, I would argue this is the most important part of your answer because you're tying it up and it really does speak to how impressive and accomplished you are, and it's what the interviewer is going to leave with. So you're going to explain how this task impacted the company, and even better is still impacting the company. Or I would say something like, when I finished the project, I had saved the company $5 million a quarter and reduced the length of manual processing by 5 hours per user for everyone in the region, and this new software is still in place today. I hope that is helpful in how to structure your answers, and I can do a video if there's anyone interested on more interview tips. Other tips I have is to rehearse these answers to someone else, maybe a day or 2 days before. I always practice with someone. I literally play out the role of interviewer and interviewee for an hour or the length of the interview, and then you can make all the mistakes you need to make before the actual interview. By the time you have the real one, you're kind of ready to do it on autopilot. I totally forgot that my interview was actually at 4 a.m. because it was during COVID and all the interviews were virtual, and I was in San Francisco while interviewing for Oxford, which was 8 hours ahead. But because I did practice these interview questions before, even though I was like half asleep, I was able to just churn them out kind of automatically. So that's sort of the preparation that I did. I do know that I prepare a lot more than other people who are a lot more articulate and feel more confident about speaking than me, but that was my approach. So good luck to everyone who has MBA interviews. I hope that was helpful and not too all over the place, and let me know how it all goes.